Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Have you ever felt like you were running out of time? Perhaps you looked around and saw people reaching milestones that you have not reached yet. Someone started a successful business. Someone got married. Someone bought a house. Someone found their purpose. Someone achieved a dream that still feels far away for you. And slowly a quiet fear began to grow. A fear that whispers the same message over and over again. You are behind. Maybe you have felt this while learning English. Maybe you have felt it in your career. Maybe you have felt it in your relationships. Or maybe you have felt it while trying to rebuild your life after a difficult chapter. The details may be different, but the feeling is surprisingly common. The feeling that somehow everyone else is moving forward while you remain in the same place. The feeling that life is happening for other people, and that you are missing your chance. There is something painful about that feeling, because it does not just affect our goals. It affects how we see ourselves. When we believe we are behind, every delay feels like proof. Every obstacle feels personal. Every success story becomes a reminder of what we have not accomplished. And before long, we begin carrying a question everywhere we go. What if I am too late? Imagine sitting in a train station. The station is busy. People come and go. Announcements echo through the building. Trains arrive. Passengers board. Doors close. Then the trains disappear into the distance, one after another. You sit quietly on a bench, holding your ticket. At first, you are patient. Your train simply has not arrived yet. No problem. But as time passes, something changes. More trains come. More people leave. The station grows emptier around you. And gradually, doubt begins to appear. Why is everyone else's train arriving before mine? Did I miss something? Am I standing on the wrong platform? Was I supposed to leave already? The longer you wait, the louder those questions become. Soon, you stop looking at your own ticket. You stop thinking about your own destination. Instead, you become obsessed with everyone else's journey. Where are they going? Why are they leaving first? What do they have that I don't? And perhaps that is exactly what happens in life. We spend so much time watching other people's departures that we begin questioning our own journey. Someone gets married at 30. Someone starts a company at 35. Someone becomes financially secure at 40. Someone discovers their passion at 25. And we quietly compare their timeline to ours. Without even realizing it, we begin treating their schedule as the standard. But what if their train was never supposed to be your train? What if their destination was never your destination? Imagine entering a large library. Thousands of books fill the shelves. Some stories begin with adventure. Others begin with hardship. Some characters find success early. Others struggle for hundreds of pages. Some stories unfold quickly. Others move slowly. Yet nobody opens 10 different books and expects them all to follow the same plot. That would make no sense. Every story has its own rhythm, its own pace, its own purpose. Human lives are no different. And yet we often expect them to be. We compare our page 50 to someone else's page 200. We compare our beginning to someone else's middle. We compare our unseen struggles to someone else's visible achievements. Then we wonder why we feel discouraged. The comparison was never fair to begin with. Imagine a farmer planting two different seeds. One grows quickly. Within weeks, green shoots appear above the soil. The other seems inactive. Nothing appears. Days pass. Weeks pass. Still nothing. If the farmer judged both seeds by the same timeline, he might believe one had failed. But beneath the soil, something important is happening. Roots are growing. Strength is developing. Preparation is taking place. The second seed is not failing. It is simply growing differently. Life often works the same way. Some people experience visible progress early. Others spend years building foundations that nobody can see. Neither path is wrong. Neither path is proof of success or failure. They are simply different journeys, different seasons, different schedules. Yet many people spend years fighting this reality. They rush. They worry. They panic. Not because something is wrong, but because they are measuring themselves against a clock that was never theirs. Imagine wearing someone else's watch every day. Every hour, it reminds you that you should be somewhere else, doing something else, living a different life. Eventually, you begin believing it. You begin believing that your own pace is unacceptable, that your own journey is broken, that your own story is somehow late. But perhaps the problem is not your timing. Perhaps the problem is the clock you are using. And maybe that is why so many people feel exhausted. Not because they are actually behind, but because they are constantly trying to keep up with a schedule that was never meant for them. What if the feeling of being behind is not a fact? What if it is only a story? A story we repeat so often that it starts to sound like the truth. Because sometimes the most important realization comes when we stop asking, "Why am I behind?" and start asking something else, a question that changes the way we see our entire journey. What if I was never behind in the first place? Many people spend years trying to answer that question. What if I was never behind in the first place? At first, the idea feels difficult to accept, because the feeling of being behind can seem so real. It follows us into our mornings. It appears during quiet evenings. It sits beside us while we scroll through our phones. And it often grows stronger whenever we compare our lives to someone else's. But feelings and facts are not always the same thing. Sometimes a feeling is simply a story our mind has repeated so many times that we stop questioning it. Imagine standing in that train station again. You are still holding your ticket. You are still waiting. But this time, instead of watching every train that leaves, you decide to look more carefully at the departures board. And suddenly you notice something interesting. Not every train leaves at the same time. Not every train follows the same route. Not every train arrives at the same destination. Some trains travel short distances. Others travel across entire countries. Some leave every hour. Others arrive only once a day. Yet none of the passengers seem surprised by this, because different destinations require different schedules. Perhaps life is not so different. A person who becomes successful at 25 is not necessarily ahead of someone who becomes successful at 50. A person who finds love early is not necessarily ahead of someone who finds love later. A person who discovers their purpose quickly is not necessarily ahead of someone who spends years searching. The timelines may be different, but different is not the same as behind. This is one of the hardest lessons for many people to learn, because modern life constantly encourages comparison. We are surrounded by milestones, lists, achievements, announcements, success stories. Everywhere we look, people seem to be reaching destinations. And because we only see the arrival, we forget about the journey. Imagine watching a movie that begins in the final scene. You see the victory, the celebration, the happy ending. What you do not see are the years of struggle that came before, the failures, the doubts, the setbacks, the sacrifices. Without those chapters, the story looks effortless. And when a story looks effortless, comparison becomes easy. But real life is never as simple as the final scene. Every person carries invisible chapters, chapters that nobody else sees. The entrepreneur who spent years failing before succeeding. The artist who created hundreds of imperfect works before creating one masterpiece. The confident person who once struggled with insecurity. The happy couple who survived difficult seasons together. Every visible result has an invisible history. And perhaps that is why comparing timelines can be so misleading. We compare our entire story to someone else's highlight reel. We compare our unfinished chapter to someone else's completed one. And then we conclude that we are behind. Imagine climbing a mountain surrounded by fog. You cannot see the summit. You cannot see the entire path. You can only see a few steps ahead. Meanwhile, another climber appears higher up the mountain. Immediately, you assume they are ahead. But what if they started years before you? What if they took a different trail? What if their destination is not even the same as yours? The more you think about it, the less useful the comparison becomes. Because the comparison never tells the whole story. Life contains too many variables, too many unique circumstances, too many different starting points. And yet we often ignore all of that. Instead, we focus on outcomes. Who arrived first? Who achieved more? Who appears further ahead? But perhaps those are the wrong questions. Imagine two trees growing in the same forest. One reaches sunlight quickly. The other spends years growing beneath the shade of larger trees. At first, the second tree appears slower, smaller, less impressive. But over time, something remarkable happens. Its roots become incredibly strong. Its foundation becomes deep. Its growth becomes steady. The years spent in the shade were not wasted. They were preparation. Many experiences in life work the same way. The years that feel slow. The years that feel uncertain. The years that seem unproductive. Often become the years that shape us most. Yet while we are living through them, we rarely understand their value. We only see the waiting, not the preparation. We only see the delay, not the development. And because of that, we mistake growth for stagnation. Perhaps this is why so many people feel discouraged. They are measuring visible results while invisible growth is taking place. They are judging the chapter before understanding its purpose. Imagine baking bread. You mix the ingredients. You prepare the dough. Then you wait. From the outside, nothing seems to happen. The dough simply sits there. But inside, transformation is taking place. The process requires time, and no amount of impatience can speed it up. Certain things develop according to their own schedule. Wisdom, trust, confidence, resilience, character. These qualities cannot be rushed. They unfold gradually, quietly, patiently, like roots beneath the soil, like rivers shaping stone, like dawn slowly becoming morning. Perhaps that is why some of life's greatest gifts arrive later than we expect. Not because life forgot about us, not because we were overlooked, but because some things require preparation before they can be received. And maybe that changes the way we see our journey. Maybe the waiting is not evidence that something is wrong. Maybe the uncertainty is not evidence that we have failed. Maybe the slower season has a purpose we cannot fully see yet. Because once we stop measuring our lives against everyone else's clock, another possibility begins to emerge. A possibility that feels surprisingly freeing. Maybe our journey has been unfolding exactly as it needed to. Maybe the train is not late. Maybe it is arriving according to its own schedule. And perhaps the real question is not whether we are behind, but whether we are willing to trust the timing of our own story. Trusting the timing of our own story is not always easy. In fact, it may be one of the most difficult things we ever learn, because trust requires patience. And patience often feels uncomfortable. We want answers now. We want progress now. We want certainty now. But life rarely unfolds that way. Imagine reading a novel where you could skip directly to the final chapter. You would immediately know how everything ends. Every challenge, every mystery, every struggle, the uncertainty would disappear. But something important would disappear too. The journey, the growth, the lessons hidden between the beginning and the ending. Stories become meaningful because they unfold gradually, page by page, chapter by chapter, moment by moment. Perhaps our lives are meant to be experienced the same way. Yet many of us spend years wishing we could skip ahead. We want to know whether things will work out. We want proof that our efforts matter. We want reassurance that we are moving in the right direction. And when that reassurance does not arrive, we become afraid. Afraid that we are wasting time. Afraid that we have missed our opportunity. Afraid that everyone else is moving ahead while we remain stuck. But what if being stuck and being still are not the same thing? Imagine standing beside a lake early in the morning. The water appears calm, motionless, silent. At first glance, nothing seems to be happening. Yet beneath the surface, life continues. Fish move through the water. Currents shift quietly below. Plants grow unseen. The lake is not inactive. It is simply moving in ways that are difficult to observe. Human lives often contain similar seasons. Seasons when little appears to change on the outside. But internally, important things are happening. Healing, learning, reflecting, growing, preparing. These seasons rarely receive recognition. They do not produce headlines. They do not attract applause. Yet they are often essential. Because the person we become is usually shaped long before the results become visible. Think about a butterfly. Before it can fly, it spends time inside a cocoon. From the outside, that period looks inactive. Nothing impressive appears to be happening. Yet inside, transformation is taking place. A transformation so complete that it changes the creature entirely. Imagine judging the butterfly during that stage. Imagine looking at the cocoon and saying, "You're behind." The idea sounds ridiculous, because we understand that the cocoon is part of the process. It is not a delay. It is preparation. Perhaps many seasons of life deserve the same understanding. The years spent learning, the years spent recovering, the years spent rebuilding, the years spent searching. They may feel slow. They may feel uncertain, but they are not necessarily signs that something is wrong. Sometimes they are signs that something important is taking shape. There is another truth that many people discover later in life. The people we admire most often followed unusual timelines. Many successful writers published their best work later in life. Many entrepreneurs failed repeatedly before finding success. Many meaningful relationships began when people least expected them. Many of life's greatest moments arrive without following any schedule we could have predicted. And perhaps that is because life is not a machine. It is not a checklist. It is not a race with identical starting points and identical finish lines. It is a living story. A story filled with unexpected turns, unexpected lessons, unexpected opportunities. Imagine planting an orchard. Some trees bear fruit quickly. Others take years. If you become impatient and cut down every tree that grows slowly, you may remove the very trees that would have produced the most beautiful fruit. Life requires a similar kind of faith. Not blind faith, but patient faith. The willingness to continue showing up even when the results are not yet visible. The willingness to keep learning, keep growing, keep moving forward, even when the path ahead remains uncertain. Because certainty is rarely what carries us through life. Trust is. Trust in the process. Trust in growth. Trust that today's efforts may create tomorrow's opportunities. Trust that not every delay is a denial. Trust that not every closed door means the journey is over. Imagine once more that train station from the beginning of our story. You are still sitting on the bench. You are still holding your ticket. But something has changed. You are no longer staring at everyone else's departures. You are no longer counting how many trains have left without you. You are no longer asking why someone else's journey started earlier. Instead, you look down at your own ticket. You notice the destination written on it. You remember why you came. You remember where you are going. And suddenly, the waiting feels different. Not easy, but meaningful. Because now you understand that waiting is not the same as being left behind. Waiting is simply part of your journey. And perhaps that realization changes everything. Maybe your train has not left because it is not time yet. Maybe your story is still unfolding. Maybe the chapter you are living today is preparing you for something you cannot fully see yet. And maybe the reason you feel behind is not because you are behind. Maybe it is because you have been looking at other people's schedules for too long. The truth is that no one can live your timeline except you. No one can walk your path. No one can learn your lessons. No one can become the person you are meant to become. That journey belongs to you. And because it belongs to you, it does not need to look like anyone else's. So if you have been feeling behind lately, if you have been worried that life is passing you by, if you have been wondering whether it is too late, consider another possibility. Maybe you are not behind. Maybe you are not late. Maybe you are simply living a story that unfolds differently. A story with its own pace, its own lessons, its own timing, and perhaps that timing is wiser than you realize. Keep going. Keep trusting. Keep turning the pages, because your story is not over. In many ways, it may only be beginning. Thank you for spending this time with me, and see you in the next story.